The Rotary Club of Greater Nashua is celebrating its centennial this year. Once a month, the club is celebrating highlights from each decade. These are the highlights from 1941 to 1950.
We are in our decade of 1941 to 1951 of our 100th anniversary. I call upon the committee members, Jay Marquis and Paige Holtzman, to give us our program for today. Ladies.
Thank you, President Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Paige. Good. Okay, we're going to talk about the decade 1941 to 1950. And then we go to the next slide, which talks about or outlines all the presidents.
We will start here with David Lee Batchelder. There's a picture of him on the left. And here is just some info on the speech Franklin Roosevelt addressed to the nation after Pearl Harbor and the challenges that Rotary faced during World War II.
The world was things were happening in the world. Life was changing all around us, internationally, nationally, and in our own communities, as Rotary was changing and growing, and the ways that Rotary tried to maintain themselves and be there for the people of their community. So in 42, Stites had been born on September 11th, 1887 in Southington, Connecticut, received his education in grade and high schools in Meriden, Connecticut, came to Nashua in 1939, joined Rotary in 1940, and his classification was men's furnishings. He was vice president of the Nashua Fresh Air Camp. And this, I keep saying semester, but this decade in particularly has a lot of information about this Fresh Air Camp. This was something that our Rotary was very, very involved in back in the 40s. And I think just before that, we'll see it for the next decade that we do as well. It's interesting. So that year in Nashua, a group of concerned citizens were focusing on the unmet needs of the region, and they created the Community Welfare Council. Again, it sounds a little bit like another precursor to United Way, like the community chest, to address some of the concerns that were happening. And they developed fresh air camps for kids who lived in the larger cities and needed a chance to experience nature with their peers. So in 1924, it was officially incorporated and became the Community Council of Nashua, New Hampshire. And the Community Council took on and developed a mental health hygiene clinic, which I think was so before its time to come up with that back then, because it was such a taboo subject, if you will. It says here that most people were even afraid to mention the words mental illness. And it's, I think, and sadly to this day, it still has a horrible stigma. But the Fresh Air Camp at the time was one of 13 red feather agencies receiving financing from the community chest. Situated on Sunset Lake in Greenfield, New Hampshire, the camp provided 150 boys and 150 girls with 2 weeks of camping in groups of 75 at a time. And they were recommended through, it looks like Nashua and Hudson, schools, public, parochial, through welfare. There was a TB clinic there, Salvation Army got involved, Goodwill Industries, Red Cross, Good Cheer Society, and of course, Community Council. And the Nashua Rotary helped support the Fresh Air Camp for many years, donating funds and equipment donations. And I think they lasted up until 2005, according to our research, was when they officially dismantled the program or the agency. And then here we have Dr. Adrian J. Levake Sr., and we're going to call on his son, Dr. Adrian Levake Jr., to talk a little bit about him, explain all this, and talk about this letter with Rotary letterhead that's next to his photo.
Okay, well, back in 1981, I put together a history of the National Rotary Club for the 60th anniversary. And at the time, I asked my dad if he would write down something about his experiences in 1943. Well, he says, since my term as president occurred during the war years, we had a gas shortage to contend with. Consequently, we had various meeting places. For a time, we met at the Nashua Country Club, then the Tavern Hotel, followed by the Nashua Hotel on Main Street, and finally back to the Country Club. For a time, we hired a bus that started from the top of Library Hill and picked up members along Main Street. This turned out to be a very pleasant and enjoyable experience. We numbered 60 members, and I knew everyone by their first name, which is difficult task to do today. In 1943, we donated an audiometer to the Community Council. We also equipped the Brace Shop in Merrimack with a number of machines. We had the annual Christmas party for crippled children. One of our outstanding speakers was the late Senator Toby. I was compelled to ring the bell on him at 1:30 as he was known to talk forever. The Republicans considered this a definite no-no, but the Democrats thought it was one of the highlights of my term in office. Needless to say, we can't please them. Still, you can't please them all. We held 3 ladies' luncheons and a ladies' night. I originated the idea of sending birthday cards to all members and presenting them with a carnation on the Monday nearest to their birthday. I joined the club in January 1934 and have maintained a record of perfect attendance ever since. I admit that at times it was difficult to make up, especially if one travels a lot, and I do. However, the experience and fellowship derived is well worth the effort. I maintain that a member who cannot attain 75% to 80% attendance record is only a luncheon Rotarian and misses the boat entirely. And that was what my dad wrote for the 1943 year that he was president.
Council on Legislation in those days was held as a part of the convention, and here you can see them all lined up in their rows. The Council on Legislation is kind of an arcane thing that Rotary uses to deal with changes in its constitution and bylaws. It now meets every 3 years with 535 tired old past district governors coming together to adjust the constitution and bylaws. As Adrian mentioned, we had to carpool to our club during those years, and here's a picture of a group in Toronto, Ontario, doing the same thing with horse and buggy. During the 40s, Rotary was international. It had 6 of the 10 presidents were from the United States, showing that the US was still a very big piece of Rotary. In addition, there was 1 president from Brazil, 1 from Peru, 1 from England, and 1 from Australia. As the right-hand side of this slide shows, even with the war on, growth continued considerably with 57 new clubs in the USA and Canada in only 44 weeks.
Here is Elgene R. Brown during his 1944 to 45 presidency. Swedish Rotarians care for 32,000 Finnish children uprooted by war. In January, Treasurer Albert Nick Carter reported that victory bonds sold credited to Nashua Rotary was $72,050 to date. Rotaries serving in the armed forces had returned and were present at this meeting.
Well, in the 1940s, we had many different types of music. It was rich with regard to different types of music. And I'll just go through a few of them so you can see how things evolved. We had the beginning of the big band era. Big band swing. We also had big band suite. This evolved into something called bebop. And then that was replaced by cool jazz. We also had cowboy songs. Western movies were really, really big. The American Hero, the Rugged Cowboy. And then a new style took root, honky tonk. So all in all, the 1940s was a time of innovation, dreams, hopes for a brighter future post-war, as evidenced in its music.
All right, so we have Henry O'Neill as president from 45 to 46. And Henry and son, Dr. Robert O'Neill, are one of our father-son membership combinations. And we just got a little message in the chat page from Jack Law that said that Roger Osgood Jr. had a son who was past president as well. We're really going to be putting so many of those legacies together to share with the club for our final meeting. On June 20th, 1946, the Smile reported that it was a fine party. President Henry O'Neill presided with his usual skill, and Bill Johnson's choral group of male voices in unusual costumes produced such a fantastic program. Rotary plays a significant role in the birth of the United Nations. And Nashua was first on the map for integration. Ricky fully integrated the 1946 Nashua Dodgers by putting catcher Roy Campanella and pitcher Don Newcomb on the roster, thus making Holman Stadium the first integrated ballpark in the United States. And I think that's truly amazing. So we wanted to get that in there. And that mural is down at Holman. You can see it.
This next slide is Dr. Elvin B. Haynes, and his year began with a field day sponsored by the Fitchburg Rotary Club. Rotary reopens clubs in Belgium, Burma, Czechoslovakia, France, Greece, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Philippines, and Singapore. Over here to the right, Nashua Rotary continues. This was their 6th annual salute to the Nashua football squad, and this year they did something different where they allowed the team members to bring their girlfriends or dates, and also Rotary Anns. This year, Paul Harris passed away, so here is just a little background. I think we all know, but after setting up his law practice in Chicago, Harris gathered several business associates to discuss the idea of forming an organization for local professionals. He envisioned a place professionals with different backgrounds could exchange ideas and really develop some lifelong friendships. In February of 2005, Harris, Gustavus Lohr, Sylvester Scheel, and Hiram Shorey gathered at Lohr's office in room 711 of the Unity building in downtown Chicago. This was the first Rotary Club meeting. In 2007, Harris became the 3rd president of the Rotary Club of Chicago, a position he held until fall of 1908. Toward the end of his club presidency, Harris worked to expand Rotary beyond Chicago. So some club members resisted, not wanting to take the additional financial burden, but Harris persisted, and by 1910, Rotary had expanded to several other major US cities. When he passed in January of 1947, after a lengthy illness, Rotarians worldwide gave more than $1 million to the Rotary Foundation to honor him.
And here are some of the Paul Harris Fellows medallions and pins, continuing the legacy of our founder. The Paul Harris Fellow Program recognizes individuals who contribute or who have made contributions made in their name of $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International. So you can see how the medallions and the pins have actually just sort of evolved. And at one time there was a men's pin and a women's pin, and now they're integrated. Ernie Goss, governor of the 195th District of Rotary International, now named District 7850, included 52 clubs in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Canada. This was the official visit by the governor, and he addressed members, met with our board of directors, and helped the clubs on matters pertaining to the administration of club matters and Rotary service activities.
Here is, and there was an international service program that was held in September of 1946. The speaker was Ben Kuroki, an American citizen of Japanese parentage, decorated Army Air Force hero of World War II. He spent the early part of his life as a dirt farmer in Nebraska. The day after Pearl Harbor, he drove 150 miles to enlist. 4 years of service took him on 30 missions over Europe and 28 over Japan as a gunner in a B-29. The latter included the bombing of his mother's hometown. He was a recipient of many awards. Since leaving the service in 1945, he devoted his time and energy to fighting for democracy in America, and he had a huge influence and contributed to the much needed tolerance in this country to people of Japanese descent. Dr. William Thibodeau here from 1947 to 48. He became president on September 18th. In July of 1947. During his presidency in September, a lawn party was held at Win Carter's Hollis Ridge Farm. Rotary Anns were invited and the weather was perfect. During Bill's term, Rotary attendance was up 87%. This was the result of an attendance contest where the losers were to buy dinners for the winners. Clarence Bent's team won with a 90.55% attendance record. Overall attendance was up 10%, and this was considered so outstanding that Rotary International took notice, and President Bill was sent a letter of congratulations. And the first Rotary Foundation Program fellowships, today's ambassadorial scholarships, sent 18 students abroad to 7 countries. Today, more than 1,100 students today study overseas as Rotary scholars each year.
So next slide, please. Rotary presidents, they used to get together back then too. During a past presidents meeting, ex-presidents pictured here attending: L. Jean Brown, Louis LeMay, William Sullivan, Louis Stites, Walter Holt, A.A. Girton, Dr. W.D. Thibodeau, Wilfred Fineff, and E.B. Haynes. Queen City publisher is the Rotary speaker, William Loeb. A lot of you might remember who he was, publisher of the Manchester Union and head of the Union League Corporation, which published 2 papers in the Queen City, spoke at a National Rotary Club. Paige, I'm thinking the year here, because I don't think we put it anywhere in this, is 1947. Was that where we were?
This is still, yeah, this is still William Thibodeau. It was 47.
Okay,
48.
I just want to make sure I'm in the right. Yep. So kind of quote that. Thank you. We had an auction on Davis Court, which is right off Concord Street, right around the corner from where I grew up. It's kind of funny to see that. I was telling the committee when we were young, we used to think there was a haunted house on that street. And then we're going to call on President Bill Berry to talk about Nashua Rotarians get free meters at Keene Session. And Bill, you want to tell us about an amusing anecdote?
So my grandfather, Francis Collins, Sr., owner of Collins Flowers, my mother's father, and my uncle Bud, who brought me into the club, was a Rotarian. He bought Collins Flowers in 1930 and soon after joined the Rotary Club. He and Dr. Sullivan one time took an airplane from Barfield to Keene to do a makeup in Keene. And he told that story many, many times. It was pre-war days because they wouldn't have had the fuel in the access to airplanes, but that just goes to show you what you can do with ingenuity. As did Adrian Levesque, saying you got to make up 75% club meetings or else you're a luncheon Rotarian. So that was just a little lore of the Collins Barry family.
Tents to local hospitals, a modern oxygen tank to each of the 2 cities' hospitals, St. Joseph, and we all remember Memorial. Project was started 2 years prior during the presidency of Henry O'Neill, continued through Elvin B. Haynes' presidency, and was finally successful with William D. Thibodeau, MD, as president. The project was funded by the charity fund from our club. It has always been our club's policy to contribute a specific object to a worthy cause rather than to contribute money to a general fund, except for the community chest and the Red Cross.
1948 to 1949, Stephen P. Tracy. Here there's an article giving $1,000 to the Fresh Air Camp from Nashua Rotary Club. Nashua Rotary observed Nashua Dodgers Day. They had Speaker William Eberly, Dodgers business manager, and Gregory Malevy, the club manager, and they talked about prospects for local baseball that were discussed. Another article here listed volunteers from the Rotary Club to help with the first community enrollment in Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Clinton Wallace, Martin Manny, Stephen P. Tracy, Albert Davis, Robert DeMontany, Louis J. Stites, Elvin Haynes, Harold Edwards, Roland Urey, William Stratton, James P. Mayo, and Winthrop Carter Jr. Sorry, today's equivalent value of that $1,000 given to the Fresh Air Camp would be $11,605.67. Here's a picture of the Special Programs Committee members in charge of the local Easter Seal campaign for the New Hampshire Society for Crippled Children and Handicapped Persons. Here are Lawrence Spalding, Dr. John D. Spring, Roland B. Burnham, Dr. Clarence F. Bent, J. Lawrence Hall, and Russell Keene. Also in the committee, but not pictured, was Dr. Adrian J. Levake Sr. Rotary clubs are reestablished in Japan, Korea, Germany, and the SAR region also during this time. And more than 11,000 food and merchandise packages are sent to Rotarians in war-devastated areas. And here is a ad for a fundraiser in Nashua's Arthur Fedler. It said, come right in here in Nashua to see and hear Arthur Fedler at the senior high school auditorium in April. Reserved seats were $3, regular admission was $2, and student tickets were $1.50. This fundraiser benefited the charity fund.
1949 to 1950, Dr. Clarence F. Bent, and we did find a photo of him there. And we had various speakers at the meetings that year as well. Nashua Rotary will entertain crippled tots. And there used to be these Christmas parties. I think we touched on them. What I like is we've been able to go through these decades backwards, so you know what a Rotarian is, you know about the fresh air camp, you know about the Christmas parties, like all these things are making sense to you, because it was a lot of discovery for our committee. Another Dartmouth College Glee Club performance sponsored by the Rotary. They were very popular then, and like we'd sponsored that concert at Elm Street, and then the slide before with Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops. So we did a lot with music. Let's see, we had 79 members on July 7th, 1949. There were some attendance rules back in the 40s, not too unlike some of them now and very unlike some of them now. We just thought for grins and giggles, we just put it in here. They're very strict. So the membership of any active member who is absent from 4 consecutive regular meetings, unless these absences are made up, shall automatically terminate, or whose percentage is less than 60 during the first or second 6 months of the Rotary year, July 1 to December 31, January 1 to June 30, shall automatically terminate. The directors wish to have it stated this way: members are not dropped for non-attendance by action of the directors. Termination is automatic. So they totally could pass the buck and just say, you're out. The Foundation for International Goodwill was initiated, and members were asked to contribute $10, $109 with today's value. A total of $675, over $7,000 today, was raised. This was the beginning of an international project, which continues to this day. Nashua Rotary always maintained high status with international giving and projects throughout the years.
Here is the program for the Milford Charter Night. That was in June of 1950. The pamphlet lists the charter members, officers, some musical songs, and here's right in the middle at the bottom is the $3 ticket. The dress was informal, and it lists Percy Hicks as the caterer. This next slide is Frank B. Clancy Jr. from 1950 to 51. Picture of him. And a couple articles about what was happening during this year. Their annual outing at the Fresh Air Camp in Greenfield. They had dinner and games. Also members of the Milford Rotary Club who were there as special guests. And there was here, the middle picture, kind of a scary Santa, but some 70 happy youngsters were entertained at the Nashua Rotary's annual Christmas party. Also in 1950, there were 7,200 clubs, 338,000 members in 83 different countries. Over on the right, an article about the Rotary Club with 100% attendance that week. It says, it is the fact that the club had 100% attendance this week. Every one of the club's more than 80 members either attended the Monday meeting at the country club or made up attendance for that meeting. It wasn't since November 24th, when the club had 65 members, that there had been perfect attendance. So it's pretty good.
Oh, I'm sure we've done that time and time again since then, right, Paige? And
Yep.
Dr. Levesque, did you want to say anything about the Christmas parties that you used to help your dad and other Rotarians with when you were younger?
Yeah, for about 12 to 15 years, there was a polio epidemic in Nashua, and a lot of the kids were affected. And as a result, many were in wheelchairs. So we used to meet at the Crowley School for a Christmas party, and each Rotarian was given a list, a person to go and pick up, a child. And I can remember going with my dad in this big Cadillac. We opened up the trunk, and we'd put the the equipment in the back there, and then sometimes they had oxygen machines and whatever. And then we'd take the kid over to the Crowley School, which is near Rotary Common. And we had a great party. And I remember Tony Gerton would dress up as Santa Claus, and he was so funny. He had those kids in stitches. And every child got a good gift, not anything junk. And they something that they could use themselves. And that we had ice cream and everything else. And I used to attend those with my brother and sister. So this is what happened for probably 15, almost 20 years, I would assume,
Wow. Wow.
during those years, every
What a,
Christmas.
what a great memory. And it sounds like the club made such a big impact for those children. And here I am at the Crowley School. It's now the Adult Learning Center for those of you who may not know that. Thank you so much, Adrian, for everything and for sharing so much. And thank you, Bill, for sharing, and Rick and Paige and the whole committee. Everyone works so hard on this. So we round out the 40s, celebrating 100 years of service to Nashua and the Nashua Rotary Club. Thank you, everyone.